name is Adam Francis with Models Restoration in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I'm a contractor, antique restorer, and a furniture flipper in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And today I've got a video for you that I hope to help you choose a paint sprayer for furniture flipping. So I've got 3 different categories to go over, and what I hope to do is just help you pick a category and maybe not necessarily a specific sprayer, although I do have a few recommendations here. But that being said, let's get into the video. So for the first sprayer here, I have the category of airless air-assisted sprayers. And this is a very basic, common sprayer. It's the Titan 440 impact sprayer. It's a great sprayer. It costs about $800. And it's good for contractors and for painters that do a high volume of painting with often more than a gallon of material. They operate at a high fluid pressure and, generally speaking, a lower air pressure, but that being said, they have a pump for pumping the paint, and the way that it works is that the paint is taken into an intake, it's pumped through the machine, out through the hose, and into a gun like this. So you control the gun by the tip size that you have. You don't have very much onboard control as far as controlling the amount of fluid and pressure at the tip. You can only change the tip size, and you can only control the spray pattern, the fan width, and other factors like that based on the size of the tip that you use and, to a marginal extent, the type of gun and other factors. But generally speaking, they're only used for large jobs. They won't exactly be great for furniture flippers because of the fact that to use one, you need at least, generally speaking, a quart of paint, and that's just to prime the gun. They are great at atomizing thick materials. And so for furniture flippers that use a lot of the same paint and they use a high volume of paint as well as multiple pieces at one time, I can see the case for using one of these. With a very good tip and with a smaller tip, they can get a great finish and they're good for that. But that being said, they just are a mess to clean up, for a very small piece. If you were just painting a dresser or something like that, you'd have to, clean the whole pump out, clean the hose out. It uses a lot of water. It's a little bit of a messy process to clean. So I don't necessarily use one. This will be covering the HPLP turbines as well as conventional air compressor setups. This is an example of a gun that can be used with a turbine or with an air compressor. So the way that these particular units work, these are the HPLP turbines. I have 3 of them here. These are all 5-stage units, which means that they have a 5-stage turbine that generates a high volume of air but a low pressure. They typically operate under 13 psi, anywhere down to 2 or 3 if you're using a single stage. And the turbine generates the air. It goes out to a hose, which goes to your gun to atomize the material. So they have a lot of onboard control with them, and you have a lot of ability to manipulate the finish, to manipulate the settings on the gun and often the turbine to get a very fine finish and get a very small fan pattern or whatever you're looking for. You'll, generally speaking, have a lot of control with these guns. And so pretty much all of them, they have different types, but they, generally speaking, work the same way. You have an air cap right here in this case. You have a fluid nozzle in there. With the fluid nozzle is paired a needle right here. This controls the amount of fluid that is allowed to pass. And then you'll also have often a air control at the tip. So with all of these settings, you have a lot of control over the material that you're spraying and the amount of air that's allowed to pass, how much overspray you're getting. That's all great. finishing, especially on furniture, it's what you're aiming for. So, you change the air cap, you can change the fluid nozzle as well as a needle. So you can go from for instance, a 0.8 would be a very small needle for very, very, very viscous fluids, up to a 2.5 needle projector set and air cap. That would allow you to shoot higher, low viscosity materials that are very thick and hard to atomize. So you control that in these ways through these turbines, but also you have some onboard control for the turbine speed and some other settings on the higher end units. So getting into price, these start at $500 to $600 for this turbine, and it comes with a gun. This one operates kind of similar to the cap spray. It's kind of a cheaper version of it. It's Harbor Freight HPLP unit. This is a cap spray. It's about $1,600. It's a 115. This is a Apollo 5-stage, and it is about $2,200. I don't recommend getting anything under a 5-stage if you're going to be using this for furniture flipping. If you're going to be using it for clear finishes, then you could go with a smaller turbine, I guess. That being said, though, they have some huge benefits in the sense that you can pick this up. They're very mobile. You can bring it, spray at a client's house, spray, at your own house or in your shop, in your garage, in the driveway, in the backyard, wherever you want to. Have a very small footprint, don't need a huge air compressor. So that's a benefit to them. They have the ability to spray a wide variety of coatings, although getting into some of the downsides now, they struggle with very thick paint. And even the higher end 5-stage units will struggle to spray very, very thick materials. It's just not what they're well equipped for. You'll have to reduce. I personally learned to adapt my spray, what I use to this turbine and to this setup. That's not necessarily going to be the case with all people. They might want to be able to spray thicker materials. So in that case, I'd recommend probably getting a different sprayer. But that being said, I love these. I've decided to go this route, and I'm not going to recommend a particular one here, but just know that if you do get one of these, while you have a lot of control, you have a lot of ability to get a fine finish by manipulating the materials, they will struggle to atomize thicker paints out of the can. Some people have had better results than I have with others, but it just depends, It depends on your setting, if you're spraying inside or outside, but these sprayers are great for that. They're great for kind of mobile refinishing, furniture flipping settings where you're probably working out of your house. I like them for that purpose. So the next category will be getting into conventional. So a conventional gun will work, generally speaking, the same way. They could be siphon fed or gravity fed, but same principles apply as far as a gun. The difference is that instead of going to a turbine, they'll be going to an air compressor, generally speaking. And they use a lot more PSI, and they require often a large air compressor, which is not something that everybody has. But, the trade-off is that while you're limited to spraying in the area where your air compressor is, you'll be able to atomize a lot thicker materials than you would with a turbine setup. They, not always, but often produce a little bit more overspray, and as a consequence of that, you have to be careful with where you're spraying at, but that can, again, be adjusted, playing with air compressor settings and, the fluid pressure and, air pressure at the gun, you can kind of reduce that. They often are cheaper in the sense that if you already have the air compressor, a good gun is going to be cheaper than buying a whole turbine setup. But if you don't have the air compressor, then, there's also that investment that's necessary. They can spray a lot thicker materials, although not as thick as you would be able to use with an airless air assisted maybe. They're great for atomizing thicker materials, and if you have a great air compressor, it would be a good route to start. Okay, so for the final category, I'm going to have like the Lowe's, Home Depot brand sprayers, and I'm going to be talking about them and what, the benefits and the negatives are for these. So the benefits with these, the first one obviously that sticks out is the price. They're cheaper than anything that I've talked about so far. They're mobile, you can pick them up, you can move them, spray wherever you want to, very small footprint, don't need a lot of materials to use these. The other positives that I'd say is that they have like this weird ability where like they don't really fit into a typical turbine sprayer unit or an airless, even though they work on those operating principles. So I've noticed that for some reason they can atomize paint really well. That's kind of like thicker, heavier bodied without much reducing. So, mineral paints, chalk paints, things that you'd be using. They're definitely made for DIY paints. It kind of seems to be the case. With this one you do have like a fine finish tip available for lacquers or for solvents or thinner materials, but I don't see myself using these for thinner, fine finishes. That seems like something that the HPLP turbines would definitely, or conventional, would excel at. So I think that for painting, these are great. If you get one of these and you paint correctly, meaning that you know its limitations, it doesn't produce an extremely fine finish, but you know that if you take it outside, you spray it with it, you bring it back inside quickly, give the paint a chance to level out, it can be very good for what it does. They work all different ways, so it's kind of, useless to necessarily just explain the way that this one works. Although it, operates kind of like an HPLP in the sense that you have, the cycle feed, you have the, what's generating the air right here, and then you have the air cap where the fluid is mixed and sprayed onto the work surface. So you have some fan pattern control, you have, fluid control, and you have the amount of air, air power control. That being said though, you probably still need to reduce your paint a little bit to spray out of these. They're well suited for paints, but they will struggle some. A lot of them lack power, but so do all HPLPs a little bit, just because of the fact that they're not made for very, very thick paints. They're great for DIY paints. I choose one of these before I use a brush. So that's just like it's a good way to kind of step up your furniture and get a professional finish on a piece without having to spend all the money. So, I think if you know what you're getting into with these and you know that they have limitations, they're great, honestly. I like using them. I use them occasionally. I actually plan on starting to use them more often just because, less work to clean this out and it's a faster cleanup, and I don't feel as bad about it if I, don't clean it out as well. So that being said, I recommend these. I like this one personally. I don't like the style where they have like the turbine generating the air that goes out to the hose and then, to the gun. I don't like that for these units. I like them for obviously just regular turbine units. But for these kind of DIY units, I like the one that's just all inclusive. It's got everything there. Plug it up to a hose and you're ready to go. Plug it up to an extension cord and you're ready